That is the time where we first started to see the beginning of the end for collectibles. If you traded in Murder Mystery 2 before this point, you may remember the extensive hype around these rare items. Most, if not all, collectibles would receive way above their listed value, and if you had your hands on any of these weapons, you might have been overwhelmed with trade offers. This is how collectibles were 2 years ago, but if you take a look at the same rare weapons today, you will notice that most of them are practically worthless. So much so that many traders are actually trying to get rid of them. So what happened to these collectibles? My name is Playtested, and today I will be explaining the rise and eventual downfall of Murder Mystery 2's collectible items. So what exactly is a collectible? Well, it's hard to say an exact definition because it varies from person to person, but for the sake of this video, a collectible is any item that can be traded that is no longer obtainable, usually being from older seasonal events. However, a collectible doesn't always have to be an old seasonal item. For example, let's quickly take a look at School Knife and TNL Knife. Neither of those items are seasonal in any way, but they were still both obtainable via a code. Since both of these items are not obtainable anymore, they fall under the definition of a collectible. It should also quickly be noted that vintages are not technically counted as collectibles. It's also worth noting that items can become collectibles based off of high demand, such as JD or Cotton Candy Knife. So why were collectibles so valuable in the first place? You might say that it's because they are rare, and while you're right, it's actually much more than that. There are multiple factors that determine a collectible's value. Firstly is how old a weapon is. In the earlier years of MM2, the game wasn't as popular as it was today. Back then, it was even rare to find someone with a single godly, and because of that, when these seasonal events and codes started being released in the game, many players started collecting these non-godly items. However, here's the thing. Even though that there were a lot of people who had collected these items, it is still given that a lot of people with them had quit the game entirely. Let's look at the Christmas 2015 event for example. At the time, items like Elf Set weren't that hard to actually obtain, so during that event, they were worthless. But after the event ended, and these items became unobtainable, over time, more and more people that played from that era actually quit the game, and so the item increases in rarity and value because they're much harder to get. The next reason is the time of year that it is. Let me explain. For example, let's take a look at the seasonal godly, say, Battle Axe. Because this weapon is Halloween themed, and it was released during a Halloween event, you can most likely expect this weapon to be more popular during the Halloween season. The same logic can be used with collectibles as well. Back in 2022, Heart's Knife was doing very well during the month of February, which makes sense, since the item was released for Valentine's Day back in 2016. The last reason is hype. Now I already explained how hype affects weapons in more detail in my other video, which by the way, if you haven't checked out already, you should. But basically, hype is something that can happen to any weapon seemingly randomly. Any weapon with hype can have its value inflated by a lot. Okay, so if collectibles were so valuable, why do they suck now? To answer this, I believe we need to take a look back at 2021 and 2022. You might ask, why those years? And the answer to that is that's when collectibles were in their prime. That's right. Every single collectible was being traded for at some point during those years, despite if it was in or out of season. And boy, saying that those were rare would be an understatement. These things were extremely hard to find, and even if you were lucky enough to find someone with one, you would still have to make a pretty good offer in order to get it, and even then it still wasn't guaranteed. By the way, despite them being very rare to find, it isn't to say that they weren't being duped in the background, but I will get to that later. For now, everyone was looking for collectibles, and if you weren't, then you were missing out. I remember that I had personally made it my goal to collect as many as I could. But as the peak of collectibles came, one thing, while not very noticeable, changed the course of everything forever. But do you know what is noticeable? Seeing if you're subscribed by looking at the sub button. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll make this brief. But seriously, if you are enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing because it helps me out more than you know. I'm trying to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I know we can do it. With that being said, let's get back into the video. Okay, before I shamelessly plugged my YouTube channel, I was saying that something changed. And what did change was logged by a series of value list updates which had all had one thing in common. A group of collectibles from 2015 had all gone down in value. Now I know what you might be thinking, Playtested. Everything goes up and down in value. You can't just say collectibles are ruined based off of a few changes from a value list, and you're right. But you also have to keep in mind that I said this change wasn't that noticeable to the eye, as in traders kept trading for these weapons. Unbeknownst to traders, something indeed was happening behind the scenes. Remember earlier when I said that just because something is rare doesn't mean it's not being duped? Well, I meant what I said. Someone must have got the word that collectibles were becoming a prime target for duping, because over the next valueless updates, 2015, 2016, and soon enough 2017 collectibles also started to decrease in value, but just very slowly. So why was this happening exactly? Well, the answer is money, and let me explain. There's a big cycle of things that happen each time certain weapons start to do well. Let's take Ghost Knife 2018 as an example. In the summer of 2021, this weapon was hyped, and many people started to look for it, including dupers. Essentially, what dupers do is after duplicating an item, they will look for people that sell items for real life money. They basically team up with item sellers. The duper will usually give a bunch of items to a seller in exchange for some of the profit that the seller makes. Additionally, dupers like to deflate certain weapons' value by mass duplicating it and then giving them to random people for completely free. And because more and more people are getting access to these weapons, valueless owners are forced to bring the value down. So, this happened over the next 2 years, and for each valueless update, every collectible just kept going lower and lower. So how much are these collectibles worth today? And that's the story about the downfall of collectibles. I really hope you enjoyed the video and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy, I would really appreciate you subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I post. One last thing is that for my 1000 subscriber special, I will be hosting a 1v1 tournament, so stay tuned to my community tab because I will be giving out information at some point about how you can enter. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and God bless.